When I was just about 20, I lived in a tiny apartment. It had just one room, and I'd been there since I was 18. After I got a better job and started earning a bit more, I thought it'd be a good idea to upgrade my living situation. So I decided to move to a small house, which felt like a big step up from my tiny apartment. The house was bigger and better, even though it wasn't super fancy or anything. But there was a problem. My old furniture from the apartment didn't look right in the new place. Everything was too small, and the styles didn't match the new house at all. To anyone visiting, it probably looked like I was trying to live above my means, or like I was pretending to be richer than I was. It was awkward. So for the next few months, I tried to save as much money as I could. My plan was to buy some new furniture that would fit better in my new house. At the same time, I thought it might be a good idea to sell or give away some of the old stuff. I put up a bunch of things on Craigslist. I listed most of my old furniture for free. Honestly, I just wanted it gone, and I didn't want to deal with moving it myself. I figured if someone else could use it, they could take it away for me. Most of the stuff got picked up pretty quickly. But for some reason, no one wanted my old dresser or the nightstand. Weeks went by, and they were still there. But finally one day someone messaged me about them. They wanted to know if the furniture was still available, and if it was really free. I told them yes, and we set a date for them to come and pick them up. On the agreed day, I was running late from work. When I finally reached home, there was already a truck parked in my driveway. I thought it was strange because I was sure we agreed on a time that was an hour later. I checked the truck, but no one was inside. Parking my car, I went back to take another look. This time, a man was sitting in the driver's seat. He got out and waved at me, saying he was from Craigslist and was here for the furniture. I was a bit taken aback because I didn't see him when I first arrived. "You're early," I said, feeling a bit confused. "We agreed on 7.30, didn't we?" He looked a bit embarrassed and explained that he had to come early because something else had come up. I was a little annoyed that he didn't let me know in advance, but since he was already here, I decided to just get it over with and showed him inside. In the man's gaze, I could tell he was sizing up the furniture. After taking a moment, he confirmed he'd take both pieces. We first tackled the big dresser, lifting it together. With some effort, we managed to get it onto his truck. It took both of us to do it because the dresser was so heavy. Next was the smaller nightstand. Just as he was about to pick it up, a weird noise echoed from the floor below, kind of like someone moving around quietly. It was followed by a soft thud. This put me on edge. I glanced towards the stairs, and when I looked back at him, I saw an odd expression on his face. "You okay?" he asked, his voice sounding strangely flat and emotionless. "Yeah," I replied slowly, though I wasn't sure if I was okay. I felt an uneasy feeling in my stomach. I decided it was best to hurry up, so I helped him with the nightstand and then showed him out. I locked the door right after he left and stood there for a moment, feeling an odd sense of relief. The whole situation felt strange, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Later, while walking around my house, I noticed a small smudge on the wall near a closet downstairs. It looked like someone had brushed against it, leaving a mark. Curious, I examined the closet and saw faint footprints inside. It looked like someone had been hiding there. My heart raced as I pieced together what might have happened. Was there another person in my house during that entire time? Had they broken in before I got back, and when I arrived, one hid while the other pretended to be the Craigslist buyer? I think that soft shuffling sound I'd heard earlier might have been the second person sneaking out of the closet. I immediately called the police, who came and checked out my home. I described the man and his truck to them, but they didn't find much else. The intruders seemed careful enough not to leave any other evidence. The whole experience terrified me. After that, I was super careful about using Craigslist. I either met people away from my home or just donated my stuff. And when I wanted something, I'd rather buy it online from a site like eBay. It's crazy how some people can be so sneaky and clever, managing to pull off such scary stuff if they just think ahead a little. A long time ago, about 8 years back, I used to use a site called Craigslist a lot. Whenever I had stuff I didn't need, I'd put it up there for sale. And if there was something I wanted to buy but didn't want to spend a lot on, I'd look for it on Craigslist. I stayed in a pretty good neighborhood, and usually I didn't mind meeting up with folks from the site. Most of the time, it was just a quick hello, an exchange of money and goods, and then we'd be on our way. One day, I decided I wanted to get in better shape, so I thought of buying either a treadmill or one of those elliptical machines. I knew that if I went to a store, I'd have to pay a lot of money. So I thought, why not check Craigslist? Maybe someone's selling theirs for a good price. After looking around a bit on the site, I found a post that seemed just right. It was a treadmill and the pictures looked good, so I reached out to the guy selling it. The next day, a man named Jack wrote back. Jack told me the treadmill was almost like brand new. We decided I'd come by his place later to see it. He lived a bit far from where I was, at the edge of the town, but I thought the drive would be worth it if the treadmill was good. When I got to the address he gave me, I saw a big farmhouse with a lot of open space around it. Strangely, there were no crops or any farming stuff. The place had a long driveway, and I noticed quite a few cars and trucks parked around the house. As I was walking towards the house, I saw Jack. He was outside, sitting on his porch and having a smoke. He got up, said hello, and showed me the way to his garage. The treadmill was right there, in the middle of the garage, all set up and even plugged in. Jack just leaned back, chilling on the other side of the garage, and told me to give the treadmill a try. I stepped on it and set a slow walking pace. Everything seemed good. But when I tried to make it go faster, it just stopped working. I was puzzled, thinking what just happened, when suddenly the garage door came crashing down. The noise was so loud it scared the life out of me. I looked at Jack, and he just kind of shrugged, saying sometimes the door does that because it's old, but something didn't feel right. I realized the spot I was standing in made me feel trapped. "So, are you thinking of buying it?" Jack asked, breaking the silence. "I don't know," I replied hesitantly. "It doesn't seem to be working properly." There was this weird silence. I felt really uneasy. Jack just kept staring at me. I tried to avoid his gaze, but there was this strange feeling in the air. "No worries, I'll walk you to the door," he said, signaling for me to follow. Having no other choice, I started walking behind him. The inside of his house looked super old, like it was from a long time ago. It reminded me of those really old houses you see in movies. And it was super untidy. There was stuff everywhere, all over the place, covering the walls, making it hard to walk without bumping into something. We made our way to the main door, but he stopped just in front of it. It felt like forever that he just stood there, not moving, not saying anything. He then slowly turned to look at me. "Sorry about this," he whispered, his voice sounding really creepy. Before I could understand what was happening, he moved super fast and grabbed my arm, pulling me back inside. I got super scared and started shouting and trying to pull away. He dragged me back towards the garage, but luckily I tripped over some of the junk on the floor. This made him lose his grip and fall too. I got up as fast as I could and ran to the door, unlocked it, and rushed to my truck. As I was starting the truck, I saw him running out of the house, coming right for me. My heart was racing so fast, but I managed to drive away. My hands were all sweaty and shaking as I drove home. Once I got home, I told the police everything. But here's the strange part. When they went to check the house, no one was there. And all those cars and trucks in his yard, they weren't his. In fact, one of them was recently reported stolen. Later, I found out that the house wasn't even his. The real owner lived in another town. They had gotten the house from their family and were just using it to store stuff. It's been a long time since this happened, and the police never found that man. It's super scary thinking he's still out there somewhere. I always wonder what he wanted from me, and if he's trying to do the same thing to other people. So, I'd heard people say to be careful when using online sites to find stuff, especially on that site called Craigslist. Some folks had bad experiences, losing money or even getting into dangerous situations. But man, I was in a tight spot. I needed a place to stay and didn't have a lot of cash to spend. So I jumped online and started looking for a place. After a bit of searching, I found this small apartment in an old building in the center of the city. The rent was low and it was close to my work. Perfect, right? I sent an email to the person who had posted it. His reply came fast. We talked a bit and set up a time for me to go see the place. A few days later, I drove over. When I got there, I was a bit disappointed. The building was old and not in the best shape. The bricks on the outside were falling apart, and the windows were dirty. One of the windows even had a wooden board on it. I went up the stairs to the second floor and knocked on the door of the apartment. A man opened it. To be honest, I was a bit surprised. He seemed really nice and friendly. He showed me around. The apartment was small but looked good. He had put in some effort to make it nice. He said he was working on fixing up the whole building and that the noise from the work wouldn't last long. After chatting a bit more, we talked about the money. The deal seemed good, so I said yes. Later that week, I moved my stuff in. But every time I walked past that old building, I thought, is this really where I'm staying now? But then I'd go inside and feel better because the inside was much nicer than the outside. A few weeks went by and everything seemed okay. But then I started to notice something weird. I never saw or heard anyone else in the building. No other cars parked outside, no sounds from the other apartments, and I didn't hear any work being done, even though the man said there would be. One morning, as I was leaving for work, I noticed a door to one of the other apartments was a bit open. I walked past it without thinking much of it. But when I got home that evening, it was still open a bit. I thought maybe no one lived there, so I pushed the door open a bit more to look inside. It looked like no one had been in there for a really long time. The place was dirty, with spider webs everywhere. It smelled really bad, like old, damp stuff. The walls had dark marks and stains all over them. The place looked forgotten and left behind for ages. I walked away from that dusty room, feeling really grossed out. I mean, it was the same building I lived in, and to see a room like that? Yuck. I was on my way to my apartment, but then I thought about the room right next to mine. I knocked softly on the door. No answer. Curious, I tried the doorknob. It was open, and guess what? Inside, it looked just like that other icky room, like no one had been in there for a super long time. Feeling uneasy, I went back to my own apartment. I wanted to know more, so I texted the guy who rented the place to me. Hey, are any other rooms being used or rented out? I asked. Because, to be honest, I felt like I was living in a big old empty building all by myself. It was kinda creepy. I was waiting for him to text back, but then I heard the front door of the building open. Footsteps. They came closer and stopped outside my door. Someone knocked. Who's there? I called out, trying to sound brave. It's me, the landlord, said a voice that I remembered from our first meeting. I opened the door a bit. He stood there with a big smile. Got your text, he said. Thought I'd just come by and talk face to face. I tried to smile, but I felt weird. I told him I was just wondering about the other rooms, leaving out the part where I'd gone into them. Still smiling, he said, How about I show you one of the rooms that's almost ready? I didn't really want to, but he was already walking over to one of the doors. He stopped in front of the door to the room I'd just peeked into. Opening it, he told me to come in and see for myself. I didn't move. Something felt wrong. He kept telling me to come in, but his voice changed. It wasn't friendly anymore. He sounded angry. I freaked out. I ran back to my apartment and locked the door. Through the peephole, I watched him run down the stairs and out of the building. Once I felt safe, I started packing. The next morning, I was out of there. I never went back. I also decided to never use Craigslist again. Even now, I can't stop thinking about it. What was that building really about? What was the landlord's plan? And the scariest thought, if I had gone into that room with him, what would have happened to me?